by the way, they released Hillary Clinton. She hammered her phones.
On Newsmax, Donald Trump insisted the classified documents case against him is unfair because no case was brought against Hillary Clinton.
She used all sorts of acid testing and everything else. They call it bleach bit, but it's essentially acid that will destroy everything, within 10 miles.
No. BleachBit is not an acid or a chemical weapon. It is data deleting computer software, a free and open source utility which will help you get rid of those files which clutter up your hard drive and threaten your privacy.
It's essentially acid that will destroy everything, within 10 miles.
So how could Trump be so delusional? Associates say he is cracking up under the stress of his court cases and is particularly freaked out over his financial challenges. The money problems are not only personal in nature, they are also political, with multiple reports that Donald Trump's presidential campaign is running dry.
I mean, heading into the 2024 election, Trump's campaign, they're facing a massive cash crunch, and some people are worried, well, they should be, that he's spending way too much of his political money on legal bail.
Right? There's even concern he may not be able to afford to hold his signature rallies.
And to get folks that normally don't vote, you got to go and tell them, we need you to come vote. And so Bullhead City, Arizona, if you don't have the money to finance some actual staff out in those areas, it makes it a lot more harder. And you can go and have a rally in those places, but those rallies cost $400,000. I mean, this is where don't expect to see Donald Trump to be parading around the country because those events cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to put on. They're in a predicament now, whether they like to admit it or not.
And remember, Trump is hoping to win his presidential campaign so he can take office and get the Justice Department to stop his criminal prosecutions. Trump's civil lawsuit cases have already generated verdicts and penalties, ratcheting up the financial squeeze.
And former President Trump has secured a nearly $92 million bond after losing his defamation case brought by writer E. Jean Carroll.
We know that it was arranged by a subsidiary of the insurance giant Chubb, so the money is going to be there if Trump loses his appeal. It allows E. Jean Carroll to collect what a jury says she is owed after Trump defamed her by branding her a liar when she came forward with a claim of sexual assault that dates back to the 1990s. But what he had to do to secure that bond for collateral, we're not sure. Typically, bonds require a good amount of cash and probably some of his assets, his real estate portfolio, but only a few of his buildings are actually debt-free and could become liquid quickly should the need arise. So there's a limited amount of properties. We believe Trump probably had to put up at least one of them.
Trump probably had to put up one of his properties as collateral for the bond and the E. Jean Carroll penalty. And Trump is facing a deadline of March 25th for the bond and the much larger penalty from the New York civil fraud case judgment.
And that is the bigger, I mean, it's such a big amount of money. It is a bigger question of will he be able to get someone to write a bond for it? Because to get a bond, he needs to be able to give them assets to secure it, whether it's cash, securities, investment bonds, or some property. And so the big question there is how is that sorted out? Now, Trump had proposed putting up $100 million and then appeal the case. An appellate court judge struck that down.
A New York Times reporter who has been covering Trump's finances for years noted on CNN that Trump was already running low on cash, as articulated in public court filings.
The Attorney General found there was 1 year where he would have been literally out of cash, except for the beneficial interest rates he got on some of these loans that were subject to this fraud case. So it does raise always questions about whether he has access to it. I think one thing is certain, he does not have access to the 500 plus million he would need for the bond in this larger case. He can't just produce that much money and keep operating as a business. And that's what they said in that filing last week, where they said we could maybe get a bond for $100 million, and they asked the court to consider that. So I think it's really clear that larger judgment is not within his reach.
Yeah.
It could be an existential threat to him, but if he has to ultimately just pay this judgment, he would exhaust more than all the cash that he has. I think that's very clear. He would have to sell something. They've got a court-appointed monitor that's in place there who would oversee what he could sell. And there's really just a few pieces of his enterprise that are left that sort of help support the other ones. And if the monitor or the court decided those were the ones that had to go in order to meet the terms of the judgment, that again would be another existential threat to the Trump organization is an ongoing concern.
Existential threat. So Donald Trump is freaking out, according to associates. And in public interviews, he's getting simple things wrong, being delusional, and proclaiming, woe is me.
So over the years, I love history. I study history. And I was always told that Andrew Jackson, as a president, was treated the absolute worst. He was just really lambasted. And I heard Abraham Lincoln was second, but he was in a thing called the Civil War, so you can understand that. But Andrew Jackson, and I heard that for years. And I look now, even last night I was saying it, I said, I don't care, Andrew Jackson or anybody else, nobody has, when you think of the fake things, nobody's been treated like Trump in terms of badly. Russia, Ukraine, everything was a scam. And it literally starts the new one. As you win one, you start the other. Impeachment hoax number one, impeachment hoax number two, all hoaxes and scams. And I said, if they ever devoted their time to making America great again, it would be a lot easier. Some people say, sir, how do you get out of bed in the morning? It's a war. We're fighting some very bad people, some very evil people.
People with bleach spit, an acid, computer software. Oh, and speaking of Hillary Clinton, in that same screed, there was another Trump delusion.
What she did was unbelievable. Nothing happens to her. Nothing happens to Bill Clinton. He took it out in his socks. It was the famous socks case.
According to Donald Trump, Bill Clinton put classified material in his socks. That appears to be a reference to interview recordings that President Clinton kept of himself by historian Taylor Branch. Clinton planned to use the recordings for a post-presidency memoir. Clinton didn't want White House staff or his personal staff to inadvertently throw away the tapes or have Clinton's thoughts leak out publicly before the book. So to protect the recordings, Clinton kept the audio tapes in his own sock drawer. 10 years after leaving office, the right-wing group Judicial Watch sued Clinton for access to the tapes, claiming they were part of the presidency. But a judge dismissed that characterization and threw out the case. Also, there was nothing in the conversations considered top secret. But for Donald Trump, facts do not matter. Only Trump's delusions matter. So the Trump self-pity tour continues, only now Trump appears to be getting more unhinged by the day. Is it due to him freaking out over his dwindling finances? Well, that certainly explains a lot, and the fact is Donald Trump is in deep financial trouble, and the Trump meltdowns are clearly intensifying. By the way, one of Donald Trump's biggest supporters on Fox News, Jeanine Pirro, is in hot water yet again.
To a person, the Democrats spent the whole day saying Donald Trump obstructed. Well, newsflash, Donald Trump is not charged with obstructing.
Actually, Donald Trump is charged with obstruction. In the Florida Documents case, count 33, conspiracy to obstruct justice.
Obstruction is not the issue.
Let me ask you a question. When you're on the air, do you have a couple drinks before you go on?
Never.
Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular is from RD Lewis 3616, who wrote, "She is so hateful. Can you imagine being around her? She would make your life miserable." Well, she certainly seems to have made life miserable for her producers. Anyway, I look forward to reading your comments about Donald Trump's latest freakouts, apparently triggered by his financial problems. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.